You know what's popular these days? Well, I guess it's been popular for quite some time, but it's especially popular these days in some of the YouTube projects you see. And that's what's called live edge. That's where they take leave part of the bark on the wood from the tree. And it can be attractive. I gotta be honest, I'm not a huge fan, but like I said, it can be attractive in the right circumstance. But what do you do if you can't get your hands on a piece of actual, real, live edge stock? Well, I'm gonna try to make my own and see how it turns out. Now, there's a pretty good chance that somebody has already done this, but I haven't seen it. So my apologies if it looks like I'm, copying someone else or ripping someone else off. So the wood that I took now for my lumber rack is a piece of hard maple, and I'm going to use my jigsaw to cut the edge of this into kind of a natural shape to begin with. And that'll give me a good starting point anyway. Now I could mark a line on here, but I'm just going to cut it freehand. Okay, I got the shape cut out, and as you can see, it looks pretty okay. It looks kind of natural. Another thing that I could have done was I could have tilted the blade on the saw to give it some slope, but in my opinion, I think that the most desirable live edge would be the one that has the most square edge, but still look like live edge. So I'm going to work with that. I've got my angle grinder here with a flap sander on here, and I'm going to try to do some of the working with this, even though this sanding disc is not ideal because it's not brand new. It's mostly worn out from using it to grind steel. I mainly use the flap sander to round over the edge. Now I want to add some actual bark texture to the wood. And to do that, I'm going to use a zip cut blade for cutting steel. And I'm just going to roughly cut crosshatch patterns in here. All right, so that's looking not too bad actually, as it is. But the next step, of course, is to turn some of this stuff black, and the best way to do that, as far as I can see, is to change it into carbon by burning it. So I've got my torch here, and I'm going to do a little sample in here just to show how it works, but then I'm going to take it outdoors because I don't need my shop filled with smoke. All right, I did quite a bit of burning on it, and I gotta admit that that is the fun part. I used just a small nylon scrub brush to scrub in between burnings. What that does is it rubs away the most charred part and it evens things out. Now, obviously, you can take this too far and you'll lose all the texture, or most of it anyway. I found that one burn and then scrub, another burn and then scrub, and it looked pretty good. And I'm looking at it here now. It doesn't look like real bark, but it does have, a quality to it that kind of resembles it. Anyway, so before I go any further with this, I need to solidify this bark, I guess you could say, because the final thing that I did with the torch was I went along the whole thing, along the edges as well, and I really deeply burned it so that it had that kind of fractured look that burned wood has and also bark has. And what I want to do is I want to lock that in so it doesn't rub off. And there are probably lots of different things you could use for this. Thin down polyurethane would probably be the best. What I have here is amber shellac that I mixed up several years ago. It's been in this bottle ever since. And I'm just going to put several coats on this and let them soak in. And the advantage of the shellac is that it's fast drying. I won't have to wait around for days on end for it to set up. Another very good option would be clear epoxy, but it would have to be thin enough to seep down inside the charred wood. I gave the shellac a couple hours to dry, and now I'm going to sand the face on both sides. Ideally, I'd run this through the planer because it's still just rough lumber. But to be honest, I'm not overly impressed with the way this looks, so I don't want to drag out the planer to do that. I'll just quickly go over with the sander and see how that looks. Now, that's not to say that there isn't potential here. I could have taken more time with the texture, and then maybe it'll look better. But everything like this is a starting point anyway. Well, that backfired on me a little bit. I thought I would save time by sanding it, when in fact it actually took longer, and I had to switch to the belt sander to get rid of the cut marks that were in the wood. I really should have taken out the planer. But this piece has got a bit of a curve in it anyway, so it would have planed way too much of it away, I think. So, looking at it, it looks pretty good. And I don't know for certain whether it was the burning itself or when I put the amber shellac on, it actually penetrated into the edge here, and it kind of looks interesting. Now, the problem with this is that it is just burned. So basically it's black. Even though I put amber shellac on, it really didn't impart any color. So I think that what you need to do with this is you need to use some kind of a tinted polyurethane or something to add some brownish color or reddish color to it to make it look a little bit more authentic. I have this stuff here that I use on my floor inside my house, and it's been sitting around forever, so I'm gonna give it a bit of a shake here, and that may mix it up, and I'll open it up and we'll see how it looks. I don't know if this is a good color here. Maybe just a red stain, like a red mahogany or something like that will work better. And in that case, it might be better to do it before putting anything in there to seal it. Just let it soak right in, the red stain, let it dry for a few days. But I don't know, let's see how it looks. I got this cheap brush. Somebody asked me about, the brushes I use. I use these ones here. I bought a box of 25 for something like $12 or something. I use these only for this kind of thing here where it really doesn't matter. Otherwise, I use a better quality brush. So I'm just gonna brush that into the burned edge. And I'm also gonna paint the flat faces of the wood as well, just to see how it looks overall. Okay, so rather than leave that on there full thickness to dry, because it'll be too nasty looking, I'm gonna take a dry paper towel, and I'm actually gonna wipe most of it off. It's almost like it's a wipe-on poly. So the objective here is to get any of it that's sitting on the surface wiped off, but not so much as it's completely bone dry. I'll do that by getting the paper towel fairly wet with the material and just dragging it across the surface like that. And I'll also do the burn part as well. Okay, I gotta admit, I'm liking this a lot better than it was before. I think that it's actually gonna turn out okay looking. When I put the poly on the burn part, it really did change the color from that really dark charcoal gray black, I guess you could say, to something that looks more like bark that's been finished with some kind of oil. And I think that'll just improve as I add coats to this. Even on the side here, it looks more authentic and it blends in better. And I've got real depth, I guess you could say. Well, it's what I was shooting for anyway. The bark needs to look like it's, deep enough to be bark. And I managed to do that here with this. It's a good solid, at least 3/16 of an inch thick along the edge here. So it really adds to the illusion.